I want to talk today about why people vote. Not necessarily how they vote, like who they're voting for, but simply why are they going to the ballot box in the first place? What are the factors that drive people there? So this is going to be basically a political science lecture, and it relates to what I did for my master's thesis, which was way back in 2004 on political participation, and this is drawn from part of that and then updated with some new research, which I'll talk about at the end. So, in terms of why people vote, first I wanted to mention that there is a paradox of voting. This is, I don't know if I'm allowed to engage you all or if you want to participate, but will one vote make a difference in the presidential election? The likelihood of that is fairly small. Clearly, if you get into a smaller group, like on a jury, a vote can make a big difference. But in the big picture, voting is not a rational decision if people are short-term utility maximizers who want to minimize their long-term regret. It takes a lot to go to the polls. You have to put gas in your car, you have to put on clothes, presumably, and you go out there and vote. Why would you do that when you could just have a free rider? Right? Economists will tell us, well, if you can get the same benefit, a winner of the election will be a free rider. Well, people tend to vote not necessarily for rational self-interest, but for identity purposes. So either they see themselves as people who do their duty, and people who do their duty vote, or they see themselves as a Democrat or a Republican or something, some other variable, a beer drinker, remember when who would you rather have a beer with? They see in the candidate someone who they think they are, or they're reflected in, almost in a way like a celebrity would be a role model or a hero for a youngster. And that is, we think, part of the psychology of why people vote. Because otherwise, in strict rational terms, you wouldn't vote. You would just do a free rider. Now, in terms of political participation as a topic, there's two types. There's what we call conventional participation, and these are the activities that the dominant culture would consider acceptable, not controversial, to be engaged in politics in a conventional sense. To be participatory in an unconventional sense is like a continuum, a scale that might start with something like a sit-in or a protest or a march of a picket line, and then move to violent, illegal, criminal acts, terrorist violence and civil war. So depending on the type of activity, it's either a conventional activity or it's an unconventional activity. Why do people vote? Psychologically, it's about who you are and whether or not the person reflects who you are as an identity. But in terms of resources, if we want to look at voting as a matter of a resource model, then it comes down to time, money, and civic skills, or what you might call social skills. In a way, time is money. So you could fairly say money or social skills. So you could donate money, spend money. You can, if you don't have money, give your time or your abilities. Oftentimes you'll find candidates coming to college campuses and university campuses. That's all right. Because candidates know that there are idealistic youngsters at these institutions who want to get involved and who have a level of competency that they can communicate with other people, they can write things, they can actually articulate the message, they have social skills to get things done. And if you put your social skills into a political context, we call that a civic skill. So there's many ways to get in politics. You don't necessarily have to be wealthy to have a resource that will allow you to get involved. It's the ghost in the machine. I can just project.
I'm trying to find a
take off some of the factors that are related to voting and then ask ourselves which ones money or civic skills. Voting, time, money, civic skills. Time. There's some skill involved. I mean, you have to know how to pull a lever or punch out a hanging jack, that kind of thing. But what's that?
Just tap.
But if you think about the 2000 election, there were some people that weren't able to punch their cards. So it's a small amount of skill, a third grade skill of filling in Scantron bubbles. Most students who come up in American systems are very good at filling in Scantron forms. So, and that is a skill, in a sense. Contacting a public official, we're talking about conventional measures still, right? Time. To some extent a social skill as well, because when you communicate with people, if you can't hold a regular conversation, you will come across as a crazy person perhaps, or as a stranger, and that can impact your message. Right? Time and civic skills. Work for a party or candidate.
Time, probably money.
Time, money, work is an intentionally vague word. It could mean work as in working on raising money. Sometimes it takes money to raise money. You have to buy people dinners before you can charge them $50,000 a plate. And then civic skills again, because if you are out there working, canvassing neighborhoods, knocking on doors, going to phone banks and calling on behalf of candidates or parties, you have to be able to have a certain set of social skills. Work with others to solve a problem or to get something done. This is a conventional form of participation. This is a conventional form of participation. Sorry, Kirsten. Better source. And it can include things that people might not necessarily consider to be political. So the idea of going to a Super Bowl, for example, with your family, your intentions may be to enjoy time with your family, but if someone mentions, hey, how's that war going? Or, hey, paying attention to the election, you see the debate, that sort of stuff, that is politics in the sense that having conversations with folks is about politics, and then if that were to lead to, hey, we need a stop sign down on the corner, oh, well, let's get involved and go to the city council meeting. And then you're getting stuff done. And you might not necessarily view that as politics, but from a broad perspective, that is politics. Political scientists, when it comes to what we call our democracy, requires engaged and informed participants. So engaged is working with others to get something done. And that happens a lot, I think, at the local level. Typically, all politics is local in a sense. Write a letter to public officials, it'll cost you a stand. But again, I think it's a civic skill or a social skill. You have to be able to articulate yourself in writing coherently or elegantly so that you can be persuasive. I was told, by the way, and I've never seen data on this, although it would be a fascinating study, probably a tough one to do, but a possible one, that a handwritten letter is more likely to garner attention. Not necessarily to a public official. And I can see that theoretically because the idea that it's the personal touch, like a hand-washed card. It's like someone didn't just copy and paste this. They took the time, assuming the penmanship is not like a serial killer. It is somebody that is, has eloquent penmanship. That's persuasive. Write a letter to the editor or an opinion editorial. Here, I don't think handwritten will work in your favor. Electronic, I think, will work in your favor over hard copy or typed in because someone at the other end of that has to input that into their probably computer system before it's going to go to print. So I'm assuming they would appreciate being able to copy and paste. I've done a lot of letters to the editor. I don't know if you've ever done that. And think voting or writing a letter to the editor has more or less impact on politics?
Wrote the letter.
I would say the same, but if you're a person for
Well, it's broader, right? I mean, you get to pull a lever for your vote, so you become a number. Whereas writing a letter is more detailed.
every book counts.
They do.
All the time.
They do. But not everybody's. More people vote than write a letter.
Yeah, it's quick.
And from my experience in politics, elected representatives are very interested in the editorial pages of local media and national media, depending on their office, because they use that as a heuristic or a shortcut to poll the community. So I think a vote is important. It's your duty. You should do that. But if you really have an issue that you're passionate about, I would recommend that you vote plus. Work with others to get something done, but write letters to officials, but also write letters to the media, because my hunch is, and my experience is, that those elected officials, their offices are getting the newspapers and looking at those, and you can get a sort of indirect FaceTime with elected representatives by getting a letter to the editor published. The president reads Sports Illustrated. Get yourself published in Sports Illustrated, and chances are you might be read by some powerful folks. Send a message on the internet about politics. This is basically the letter for the 21st century. Clearly this is about money. It's tough to donate money if you don't have money. Unless you have a green tongue and you can separate money from other people's monies. That's a certain talent and social skill that is then tied to money. Wear a t-shirt, display a political button. That's another way to send a political message. It's related to the notion of displaying a lawn sign or a bumper sticker. A lot of people will see the back of your car. A lot of people will drive by your house if you're on a busy street. If you wear a t-shirt, take a YouTube video of yourself and post that on there, and then you can get a number of hits. Well, you're participating in politics. And then in an unconventional, here's two unconventional measures of participation. Going to a protest. That is, most people don't go to a protest unless perhaps they were in a union or they were in some sort of organization that was protesting the demise. Like if you're a writer in Hollywood, they remember they went on strike a while ago and they all went and picketed. But usually the unions will pay those folks to go do that, so in a sense they can afford to do that. Well, most people who are not necessarily connected to an organization like that are on a protest. But that is a way to get something done. And then also argue with a stranger. This is slightly different than what I mentioned before, going to the Super Bowl party with your family and talking about politics. Families, not strangers, presumably. But an honest-to-goodness sit down at the bus bench and say, hey, how you doing? How about that war? That's an unconventional phenomenon. Most of us do not talk religion and politics with strangers because why is that actually? Well said. It's a touchy subject. People get emotional about religion and about politics. The group, if this is about our group identity, then people get really sensitive about who they see themselves as in terms of who they are as a person. And if you were to take a position different, that I am somebody different than who you are as a human being, I am offended by that. Yeah, that's a touchy subject.